Hello everyone. On behalf of Creative Commons India, I'd like to welcome you all to this conversation on open education. And at Creative Commons and at Creative Commons myself as an open education practitioner, we believe that the current trends in education and the direction of the trends in education, where there is an increased privatization, a commodification of knowledge, is looking a little dangerous for the kind of society we live in. There's a lot of inequity in our society, and if we believe that education is a right and not a privilege, then one of the counter narratives that we need to build as a community of educators is open education. We've set these series of webinars for people to discuss open education, to build a community around the idea of open education, and to really counter the increasing profit controlled or private controlled direction that the country is taking. We are hoping through these conversations, hoping to have another 3 or 4 more, both hands-on workshops as well as discussions, where we build a community, we counter narrative to say that education is a right. And today with us, we have 3 people, 3 stalwarts, practitioners, advocates who have been talking, using, practicing, advocating for open education over the last 20 years. This is not something that they have begun doing now, and we are looking at the next 1.5 hour as a conversation, as something that we want to discuss. We want to understand what is open education, what is the role in today's current scenario, both politically, sociologically, technically, definitely, with the increasing digitization. So I'd like to introduce you to our 3 panelists. I'd also like to thank all the 3 panelists, but particularly Dr. Sanjay Mishra, who is sitting in Canada. He, as most of you are aware, and I don't want to waste time, but most of you are aware that he's one of the leading scholars in open, distance, and online learning. Currently, he is an education specialist in e-learning with the Commonwealth of Learning at its headquarters in Canada. And he's been involved in UNESCO. He was with IGNOU. A very interesting and innovative program that he launched in IGNOU was a 1-year postgraduate diploma in e-learning. So we have with us Dr. Sanjay Mishra. I'd really like to thank you for waking up early and for suggesting that this needs to be a conversation and not lecture. There is a webinar fatigue, and we're very glad that you structured this in this manner, and we're looking forward to the next 1 hour. We also have Dr. Indira Conero, who is an associate dean and head of the e-learning department at the ICFI Business School in Hyderabad. She's a passionate Moodler, passionate OER practitioner, and does a lot of professional training for higher education institutions, both for open source LMSs like Moodle, but in the context of how you can really create your own OERs. And then we have Professor Savitri Singh, who's hosting this event. She's the country lead of the Creative Commons India platform, and been an educator for more than 25 years. She was the principal of the Acharya Narendra Dev College, University of Delhi, for over 10, and has been the member of various knowledge commissions on science and maths, focus groups with NCRT, and also been part of UNESCO. Dr. Sanjay Mishra has also done global work on OERs. And the idea for the next 1.5 hours is that we will pose certain questions that people have. There's still a lot of skepticism and doubt about open education and open education resources. There is a huge force by the proprietary as well as government, while they say that the open education is our mission and our philosophy, but we see completely contradictory events, directions, decisions that are being taken. So the next 1.5 hours is going to be a question answer based kind of a situation. And we would like, you are in the YouTube channel or you are with us in the room to pose your questions in public, please keep your mics muted and webcams off so that we don't lose any bandwidth. And looking forward to doing a wider, Savitri Singh will take over from me to let you know what Creative Commons is, how you can become an OER practitioner, and how you can build and contribute to this much needed movement in India. So I'll hand over to Savitri now without wasting too much time. And Savitri, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I've switched on my presentation. I hope it's clear. Good evening and a very good morning to Sanjay. And I don't know whether Stavros, Steve, and others on the opposite side of the world are there. It's good morning to all of you. On behalf of Creative Commons, I invite you all to the first of a series of webinars. It could be workshops, discussions, something. And just a few words about Creative Commons. Creative Commons was started in 2001, and it's a non-profit that's based in US, but it has got it's got a global network, and where the aim is for educational access and expanding the range of creative works available for others to build on. So basically trying to promote free content in the world. And it also created these licenses that enabled authors to license their work in the way they wanted. So that's important, that you can choose different kinds of licenses. All over the world, at the moment, we are only there in 43 countries. I mean, in an earlier version of Creative Commons, say 3 years back, we were there in over 70 countries. But now the chapters are being developed in countries, and India got its chapter 2 years back. And at the moment, we have 37 members. Now, obviously, that 37 is a very small number. And I hope after going through these workshops and these webinars, some of you will be enthused to join Creative Commons because of your commitment towards open education. In India, I mean, these chapters, they work, all the members elect a country lead and a representative on the Global Network Council. And Subhashish is the representative on the Global Network Council, and whereas I'm the chapter lead. But we basically work through members, and in this particular webinar is being held because of the enthusiasm shown by Michelle and Indira. Now, open access to knowledge is critical, especially during this global health emergency. In these days when all of us are housebound and education has been primarily through online teaching and learning, with teachers using and creating content, there is an urgent need for all of us to understand how and why educational content should be more accessible, how to use Creative Commons licenses, how to license your own content, basically understand open and accessibility. So I'll leave it at that. And now I invite Indira to initiate the discussion with Sanjay.
You are now unmuted.
Indira, I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry for that.
You are now muted.
Yeah. Good evening, all. Good morning, Dr. Sanjay Mishra. So I would like to start with, yeah. So if you recall, you were initiated at SEMCA as a director. I'm one of the beneficiaries of that program. So OER enabled e-learning, you piloted and you sent that link to Brau, and Professor Chandrasekhar sir sent me forwarded that. So I'm the beneficiary of that, one of your innovative ideas. So I would like to start with that. Okay. We are privileged to have you at CC India's first live interactive session on open education and open educational resources, because you have vast experience in this area, not only open education and e-learning also. And before starting the session, I would like to provide some details about the registered registrants. Total registered registrants were 210, not only from India, surprisingly. We also have from Australia, Bangladesh, Brazil, Dominica, Maldives, Nepal, Philippines, Sweden, etc. I don't know how many of them are participating now. And among these 210, we have 97 higher education faculty, 24 librarians or library professionals. Surprisingly, we also have 23 edtech professionals, consultants, CEO and instructional designer. Generally, they promote commercial initiatives, not open philosophy. And 19 students and research scholars we have. 15 teachers from primary and higher secondary schools, 2 teacher educators and 1 trainer. And also we also have ICAR scientists, Indian Council of Agricultural Research Scientists, 1 special educator and 1 principal from Maristella College. She also was registered for this. So this is all about the registrants. So let me start the session with Q&A. We have 4 from the CC India members. 4 questions are from CC India members and 3 from the registrants submissions. And then we'll take the live session participants' questions. Okay, I would say it's a timely initiative from CC India because we have been witnessing COVID-19 educational disruption for the past 5 months. So in April, 90% enrolled learners were affected across 194 countries. Still, 60.5 enrolled learners are affected across 119 countrywide closures. This is from UNESCO data. So with this backdrop, the first question to you, Dr. Sanjay Mishra, how do you see the role of open education and open educational resources in the overall educational landscape and also in recovering from the crisis and transitioning towards blended or online learning?
Thank you, Dr. Koneru. Thanks to Professor Savitri Singh and particularly Tamarin Tree, Michelle,
yeah.
Hemant, and all the members, Dr. Sridhar Gautam and others who are very much active in the Creative Commons India. Thanks for inviting me to interact with you all, and thanks for the nice introduction. And I think the challenge that we are currently in allows us to reflect on open education as such, and of course OER. It's Creative Commons, as Professor Savitri Singh talked about, that makes Creative Commons makes sharing of cultural works easier for anyone, anywhere. In the context of open education and OER, I think sharing of knowledge resources, or what we call cultural works, are very important. Both open education and OER are complementary to each other. They are not same. Many people consider they are same, but they are complementary to each other, but 2 different things. Open education is a much wider philosophical concept, whereas OER talks about a specific product that is a lesson or a resource. Open education talks about removing rigidities in our education system, which allows us to make learning for anyone, anywhere kind of situation. One example of open education I always give is that right to education is an example of that. When governments makes everybody should be in school up to a certain age, it's a kind of open education example. Some people do also talk about the new trend these days. Massive open online courses are also as a trend of open education. But the thing that we talk about in the field of open educational resources and open education has specific connotation. We talk about resources which are free for sharing. Now, people can make use of those resources, anything they want to do without permission of the copyright holder. That's open educational resources. And some of these developments like MOOCs may or may not be OER. So we are in a situation that most of the information available on the internet or elsewhere are copyrighted. And that creates lots of stress on access to learning in terms of increased cost for people. And during the current time, cost is a major issue for everyone. People's jobs are going, people are under stress. They need more information, more education, more skilling. And at no other time, open educational is so important than now. It's very important that we focus on creating an environment open education and increased access to OER. That's what I talk about, creating an environment of lifelong learning. Open education is the lever for making lifelong learning smooth. And OER allows us to make that free. And because of these things, there are lots of initiatives that are going on. Like just a few minutes before, Professor Savitri Singh showed about the Open Place initiative. We also did the OER for COVID initiative some time back with OER Universitas in New Zealand. So there are lots of things that we could do, and governments could do, educational institutions could do to mitigate the challenges that we are having. But broadly, openness and open education is important for creating an environment of lifelong learning.
Okay. And the next question is, out of these 210 registrants, 73 registrants said they are not familiar with OER. So to help everyone understand the terminologies, can you explain the difference between open education, open educational resources, and open access?
And Sanjay, maybe exactly what you mean by free here in the context of content.
Okay.
Because obviously, I think you don't mean the money behind it.
Yeah. As I just mentioned about open education as a philosophy, okay, and OER and open access are actually, there are different terminologies used, are actually two different sides of the same coin. If you are trying to create an a learning society, or you are creating an environment of lifelong learning, I think both open access and OER are required. And there are these two terms were emerging by two different groups of people at the same time in 2001, 2002. One was led by educationists, teachers, and other one was led by librarians or professionals who were having difficulty in accessing research information, journals. And the other one were looking into who were having difficulty in access to reading packs, articles, and textbooks, and so on and so forth. At around 2007, the Cape Town Open Education Declaration tried to cover all these things and focus on openness as such. Openness, which I believe as something like is a freedom, flexibility, and fairness. Freedom in terms of sharing and adapting different experiences and learning materials. Flexibility in terms of time and space of learning, entry requirements, choice of licenses. Now we talk about some of those because Professor Savitri talked about licenses of Creative Commons. There are 6 different types of licenses, of which 4 are morely used in OER. So you as author or creator can have flexibility of choosing time and space of learning, entry requirements, choice of licenses. Now we talk about some of those because licenses of Creative Commons. There are 6 different types of licenses,
You are now
of which
unmuted.
4 are morely used or creator flexibility based on learning, entry
Bhupendra. Bhupendra or Darshana? Yeah.
You are now muted.
Thank you very much for the support. The choice of is about flexibility, where the third thing that I always emphasize about fairness. When you are using OER or openness as such, you are looking into making knowledge accessible to everyone, irrespective of differences in society. Particularly, the focus is on when public funds are used to generate educational and research material. This should be available free to all, making equitable access to knowledge for all. That's the kind of approach. Now, one of the things I'm using here as free is open educational resources are truly freely available materials. But at some point of time, this free could be, I would say, free or low cost. So because the licenses allows some people to make economic living out of the cultural product. But largely, when it is an OER, an alternative copy of things are available for free as such. So free is something important as such in the whole process. Even if the licenses allows people to make money as a process. So free as something is key to dissemination of knowledge, so that you are paying either free, and therefore free or low cost is the more important thing to understand.
And I think we'd like to add that when you say free, it's free to use, free to modify, free to adapt. So those kind of freedom, you are free to use that material in the way you want. I think that we should.
Absolutely. Those things are I think I wanted to explain a little later. So if somebody asks those questions. But I think it's better to explain at this stage. So to look at what is OER. If we let's focus on primarily OER, open educational resources. Now I don't want to give the definition of OER, but I want to specify that OER are materials which are either available with in the public domain or with an open license. Okay, public domain, most of the time people confuse public domain as something what is available online. Interestingly, everything that is available online is copyrighted by somebody. So public domain has a specific connotation. And public domain means if the author has relinquished copyright or copyright to the public, or the particular work has copyright expired. For example, works of Premchand or works of Shakespeare, those are copyright expired material. You'll find lots of different publishers republishing their work and selling it because they are in public domain. That's one. The second one is that if the material is available with an open license, in this case, Creative Commons provides 6 different types of licenses. 4 of those which are not having non-derivative clauses, those 4 are considered as open educational resources because they allow you to reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute, and of course retain. So remixing, revision is important. Non-derivative works do not allow to do those things, and therefore those are particularly OER. On one of the most important thing people get confused is that by making things OER, there is no copyright. That's a myth. Everything that you create do have a copyright of yours. What you are exercising is the licensing requirement of copyright law. So you are allowing people to use your product using specific licenses. So copyright still there. If you do not have copyright, you do not have the rights to use the licenses or share it to anyone. So you need to have, somebody has to have the copyright to share something. So those are the basic things. And I look forward to more questions and comments from the public and Dr. Indra.
Yeah. So what makes OER different from other learning resources? And the first question I received from all my participants at various FTPs: why should we use or repurpose OERs for teaching, learning, and assessments? How to convince them so it eases their, actually in the current scenario, it eases their online course development time. So
I think I try to explain the first part of the question just now, but just to repeat, the OER, when you are looking at that, you are looking at sharing. Sharing is the key important part in the OER, so that you create something and you are sharing. Okay, so you are the creator, you have the copyright, you are sharing, and somebody else takes that material, reuse edges. Okay, maybe the person wants to revise, contextualize the material to his or her own condition situation, or maybe the person is not happy, only small component of your work is useful. Then I will look at other resources and 5-6 other resources, and then remix something for my own use, for my own students' use. And then once I created this thing, one of the basic condition of OER is attribution. All the license of Creative Commons indicate that you must attribute the original creator of that. So you attribute the original creator and share it. Now that's the basic thing. So OER helps in creating a cycle of giving back. So you create, you give back, you create, you give back. So there is the knowledge production continues, and it is not stopped by it's circulation, which is important. It doesn't stop somewhere because of some copyright restriction that you cannot reproduce and you cannot revise and redistribute. Having said that, that is the key for any teacher to use open educational resources. Because if you are using a proprietary textbook, you are not able to make any changes to those proprietary textbooks. If you are using OER, you can contextualize that OER into your own situation and do whatever you want to do in your classroom. So what it allows you to, the freedom comes again here. Okay, you make your classroom multimedia based, not just lecture, because you can bring in different open educational resources to your class. You can use audio, you can use video produced by others and bring into your class. So your educational practices changes from a lecture based method to a more interactive, dynamic method of teaching and learning. The pedagogical approaches changes, and this is one of the biggest advantage of using OER that I talk about. Not the free thing. No, your learning material is available free is not a greatest thing. Lever. The most important part is that the teaching and learning process becomes more interactive, engaging, because you bring in different experiences from different places and put it into one coherent teaching and learning scenario. So as a teacher, if you want to if you want to be more dynamic and you want to be more involved with your student, if you love your student more, I think you should be using OER.
Yes, that is required. Passionate teachers accept all these. we have been observing. And here we have one question from the registrants. It's about inclusive education. So now everyone says this pandemic has made digital divide more apparent. So with poor net connectivity and accessibility, how could tribal first generation learners from remote villages benefit from open educational resources? Can you suggest any ways to bridge this?
This is very interesting question, very useful. Thank you for asking this question. Many times this is being considered that OER is only digital. OER is digital resources and also non-digital resources. So a print material can also be OER. So what is important is that we have open licenses attached to printed resources. Okay, that is more important. If it is having an open license, that material can be repurposed by anyone in remote places in print version and distributed. Okay, suppose there is a document, there is a test book of class 6 or class 8 or 9, which is to be going into a remote area, and that area accessibility is not a problem. But interestingly, that book is available online somewhere. Some useful interest in entrepreneur found it out in that area online, somehow has a data card and found out the material. The person downloads the material, makes print copies, so let's say 100 copies, and sold it with few rupees to children in that remote district where access to that document was not available. That person would be doing a copyright violation. That's the current scenario, because the learning material was not available in with an open license. So if that material is available with an open license, what person is doing is a noble service to taking education to the doorstep of the tribal people who were not having access to education at a very low cost. That person may be making few rupees profit, but these people were not having access, and this person provided that access. So what the important thing to understand is that we can provide access to people through different means, and that's why OER can help. There are other solutions to it, but I'm giving this basic example of increasing access through printed materials, which could also be OER. There are other digital solutions which is probably not appropriate in this context and this discussion context. So we can use OER to reach anywhere in the world, because it is both digital and non-digital.
If I might ask a question, Sanjay, can you explain why India, though it committed to open education resources way back when NME ICT was there, that is 2007, we haven't yet got enough content as OER in India, at least for education, at least for the primary level. Can you sort of explain that?
Yeah, not directly, but I can reflect upon definitely on that. At higher education, higher education level, India is probably the leading producer of OER in the world.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we have NME ICT products, and we have InflipNet products. We have the Consortium of Education products. So lots of things are available as OER. Lots of things available as OER. Even though we would like to, at least I would like to see more. In the school education sector, we only have one platform called NR OER, and not much has happened in that sector, and there are a lot of scope. But I think I would like to go back a little bit, and I think it's lack of information for many people, and lack of contextualizing the previous knowledge. Now, we need to talk about something that is our cultural heritage. Now, in the current scenario, I think it's more important to bring in that. Now, and now in India, Vidya Dan is considered to be the highest form of giving. Vidya Dan is Mahadan. Okay, so that's the highest form of giving. In 2012, ICT in schools policy, it was for the school sector, do recognize Creative Commons. I think this is what the Creative Commons India should play an active role. Look at the ICT in education policy for the schools. Creative Commons do have a space and it is included in the policy. That's the kind of 2012 when very few people were knowing about Creative Commons as such. It was included in that time. So it was there in the policy, but it was not implemented, followed through by people. So, and in the current situation, what I will see that now I also saw that the new policy do not include anything about OER as such, even though there are a lot of discussion and interests going on. But I am really hopeful in the current situation to particularly, the policy that we are now having, the National Education Policy 2020, has an umbrella platform advisory body to the government, which is a kind of National Educational Technology Forum. And I'm sure more will be done by this platform in coming days to focus on school education as such.
Yeah, Indira.
Yeah. So this question is from the registered participants. How do we encourage undergraduate students to use and create open educational resources?
I think this is a very useful question. Thank you for asking this question, because this is something we need to promote a lot. Engage students, catch them young is the most important part. Now, if younger people are oriented to OER, they will be the messenger to create more and more OER, make OER available more and more. And two groups of people would play a significant role in making that possible. One is the teacher, and two is the librarians. The teachers would make a key role in this, particularly when they are teaching or giving assignments. They need to make it clear that what's the academic use of OER, how they can use OER, integrate OER. That can only happen when the teacher themselves are integrating OER and using OER appropriately in their teaching practices. So when the student is using a product, a knowledge resources, it's not treated as plagiarism if it is used appropriately. So those kind of things need to be done. The second thing is also to the librarians also need to help in the process to curate more and more OER from different subject domains and make it available to both the teachers and students. One of the things that I always recommend is to have a co-creation project. Teacher, student, and librarian co-create new knowledge within a subject domain area. Now, whether it is language learning, whether it is literature studies, whether it is physics, chemistry, or biology, whatever it is you are teaching, you can actually co-create knowledge with students. That is something will help. There are lots of examples in these ways. Particularly, a good example is use of Wikipedia in education. there are several projects on use of Wikipedia in education, which allows co-creation of knowledge. So those are the kind of things we need to do to promote OER amongst graduate students.
So we start with some examples. I think, do we have any questions? Or else I have one last question. Can you share any successful and sustainable OER adoption? So you started this initiative with the PG diploma in e-learning. Now Lumen courses, this is another successful model. Any other institutional level successful models? Sustainable and successful.
Okay. I can give some worldwide examples. The biggest successful example is available in the North America. Now you talked about Lumen. Lumen is a company, but the BC government, the British Columbia government in Canada, has created a project called BC Open Textbook. And what they do is that they give seed funding to selected teachers to write textbook on a particular subject. Okay, and those textbooks are all available with the CC BY license, so anyone can adopt. Second thing they do is that they help anyone who can take those course, any teacher, any other university can take that course and adopt that course in that institution. So they provide another small grant to that teacher to encourage, incentivize, and that teacher adapts that course. And currently there are over 150 courses that are being adapted by a large number of teachers. And they have saved millions of dollars for their students since 2012. So this is one of the most successful projects that I always give example. There are many more similar projects in USA and elsewhere. Even similar projects are being now planned in USA. One example I will give on a school level project is from South Africa. Very interesting project is by Siabula. Yeah. Siabula is a private company. Okay. Government in South Africa, school level textbooks are produced through a competitive process. Okay. So and there are a lot of people involved in the process, and the government directs every content development process. So a select group is identified to develop the material. Maybe it's an NGO, maybe it's a private entity or anyone, and the government drives the content development process. Siabula has been given to develop content for several school level and several subjects, particularly math and science. So Siabula develops the content and prepares the final material, gives it to the government. Government distributes free of cost to the students. But the printed material, they do not talk about OER, but they allow Siabula to release those materials freely for anyone. So those materials are available freely, sometime in open access, not as OER. You cannot repurpose those materials, but they are available freely to anyone. Even though we would not talk as OER those things, but widely those are used and examples of OER by lots of people. But it's an interesting model where a private entity creates the material, makes it available to anyone free of cost online. And one thing they do out of that also is that use an digital version which is also more interactive, more useful. Okay, and therefore they make their living out of it. Similarly, Lumen Learning also shares the learning materials free of cost, but there is an advanced version which is used as resource generation. And those models sometimes I call as the service model of OER sustainability, because somebody has to pay for making OER available to all. Now, either the government makes it free or subsidizes it, or some users have to pay some services so that the key content is available free of cost to a large extent.
Sanjay, since you mentioned repurposing, there was a question asked by one of the participants. How do CC licenses provide everyone with free and perpetual permission to engage in the 5R activities? So maybe you can bring in the 5 Rs here.
Yeah. Excellent point. CC licenses there are 6 types of CC licenses, and those are based on four important aspects. Now, the first one is BY. BY means attribution. So every CC licenses comes with that attribution, that you need to attribute the original creator of that. CC BY is that. Then SA, share alike. That means if any license is with the share alike, any document is available with a CC license that has SA on it, that means if you want to create any derivative out of that work, that needs to be shared with the same licenses. The third one is NC, non-commercial. If a license is attached with an NC, and then you cannot sell that purpose to make profit. That's the key thing. You cannot engage in a commercial activity with that materials. If you can do anything, you can create a derivative, but not for commercial purposes. And the materials, that is the fourth aspect, is ND, is non-derivative. If a material is having non-derivative clause, then you cannot modify, change that material. So you cannot create a derivative. Because of this, any license which has with ND is not typically considered OER. Those are available in open access for anyone to reuse. You can redistribute it, but you cannot repurpose it. Because you cannot repurpose it, we in the field of open educational resources largely do not consider ND licensed materials as OER. Some people do still consider that as, because it's available in open access. So that's another thing. So that's the licensing condition. Whereas one of the thing is in the CC license is perpetuality. Once you release a license, release any document with a CC license, you cannot revoke it. It's an irrevocable license in legal term. So if you have licensed it at once, it is the same you cannot revoke it, even if you are the original creator for that. So you give the license perpetuality. So some people think that, oh, I will give it for some time and I will withdraw it. That's not Creative Commons licenses allow it. So that's inbuilt in the license, and it allows all the time. And the key thing is that if you have an CC license attached, you do not need the permission of the copyright holder. You do not need to search who is the copyright holder or get in touch with that. But still, I receive requests most of the time. Many of my works are available as OER, but I still keep receiving requests. That's good. Sometimes you feel happy that somebody is asking you permission, and you think that somebody is making use of material. But I politely write to them, look, thank you very much. These are available as OER. You can make use of this as long as you attribute the original creator. So, and you can, as you can use the 5R. If it is OER, then you can retain that product as long as you want. That's the retention kind of thing. But you can reuse as is. You can revise and make modifications to it. you can remix it, you can redistribute it. Now, if your material is not with an license and you send, suppose you receive, you downloaded an article from your institutional library. Your institutional library has an access to a proprietary journal, and you downloaded one article. And if a friend of yours asked you that same article, that, oh, I need this to be this article, and if you send that by email, you are actually violating copyright law. Okay, because you transmitted that electronically, and the copyright is owned by somebody else, and you downloaded because your institution has paid subscription and not another person. Okay, that's the kind of things happening currently. We are open access. We are trying to make this a different world, that everything is available. Knowledge resources are available free to everyone for reuse, revise, remix, redistribute, and also retain. I hope I made sense, Savitri-ji.
Yeah. Ayan has asked a question, Ayan Mondal, and he says, during pandemic situation, all institutions are moving towards online teaching resources. Teachers are using OER, but if outside institution someone else use these materials, the institution show their concern and ask the IT departments to stop projecting it. So how do you overcome the hesitation that institutions have when others share their materials? Because this is happening from institution to institution in the country. We are all so possessive about what we create that we are afraid we'll lose something if somebody else uses that material or copies that material. So we have that issue. As Indians, I think we have that issue.
I think it's everywhere we have that mindset, and that happens because of our long historical purposes, because we think that we are creating something. We think that the society has given lots of importance to creating something, whether it is flimsy or it's just a PowerPoint or whatever it may be. Okay, people think that, okay, this is proprietary, my PowerPoint, I don't want to share. Whereas this PowerPoint will have few bullet points which are already available somewhere else. So the whole idea is about what I all consider this kind of things is an opportunity for us to educate people about the knowledge production process as such, the scholarly communication process as such. What is knowledge? Okay, what is an idea? What is a knowledge? What is copyright? I think most people are not clear about copyright as such, and people fear copyright. And there is another group of people who are now using bigger terminologies like intellectual property. Now, as if they are getting a lot of money out of preparing textbooks. Now, I can believe in patents and other things, your intellectual property. A textbook writer gets peanuts, actually. If you write a textbook and publish it, the royalty you get is very little unless your books are sold millions copies. Okay, so we are not talking about your that part. We are more concerned about an institutional use of educational resources. If I am creating a resource in a university, technically the university owns that copyright to that material. But first of all, if that material is original in itself, okay, many times the materials that we create are not really original. It's a repurposed material, recycled material. What is original in a PowerPoint, for example, is the way I deliver the PowerPoint, not the PowerPoint as such, because PowerPoint has few bullet points. So the bullet points doesn't make anything. That's something I want to tell everyone. Bullet points do not make knowledge to provide creativity. You might have used some fancy graphics and all those things, but what is important is expression of ideas. So when you are presenting the PowerPoint, that expression of ideas is your copyrighted materials. So if you are recording that PowerPoint, and that becomes a copyrighted material, and then now you own something, or your institution owns something, and at this point of time you need a policy. Your institution should have some policy of sharing. If your institution do not have a policy of sharing of what kind of licenses to use or any framework to choose which license to use, then you are in trouble yourself first as a teacher. Then somebody else will tell, why did you share that material? Because that material belongs to my institution. So all those issues come because lack of policy. When policy is not there, there is no capacity building. People have no understanding of OER, no understanding of copyright, no understanding of licensing. So one of the thing I always tell, that we have a small course on OER. I tell, go to our online OER course, learn OER.call.org, have a basic idea about those things. And those who are objecting to you, irrespective of having policy, some places there are policies, but still somebody will oppose, because people move from places to places. There will be new person who may not be knowing that there is a policy, and that will be opposed. So awareness and understanding is important, and I think it's a long process, long journey for all of us to change the mindset from a proprietary mindset, ownership mindset, to a sharing mindset. We need to rekindle the Vidyadan that I'm talking about, the ideology of sharing.
Okay, Sanjay, there is a question by Arundhati Chetpet, who asks whether frequent use of OERs affect production of reflection knowledge. I mean, does it mean students get used to depend on available OERs?
I think this is a very interesting question again. I think in fact OER increases reflection more, in my view, and that's what I propose. You know, reuse is a good. Now, in fact, I tell you, when I started that postgraduate diploma in e-learning in 2009-2010, mostly I reused material. Now we did use textbooks, materials available as is per uses, and we topped up with our teaching learning transaction, assignments, synchronous sessions, group discussions, and so on and so forth. So it was more of an as is use or reuse condition. But we reflected on those materials, we worked on those materials more. Okay. But when you are repurposing materials, you take one material and revise the material. How will you revise the material? You will revise the material when you find it deficient of something, or it is not contextual of something. So there is already reflection on it. You are remixing material. So it's remixing a more creative process. So more creativity comes. So you are remixing a textbook by bringing audio clips, by bringing video clips, by bringing a web page, keeping everything in your PDF file with video, interactive video within PDF, or so on and so forth. So you are doing more creative, more reflective practice. So when students, and I give an example of Wikipedia in schools and so on and so forth, students are more involved, more engaged. They are deep processing knowledge when you are doing things. So OER is more reflective process than a just as use case. Just as use is the probably starting point. I talk about that when I initiate people to the world of OER. I said, look, tons of materials are available. Billions of Creative Commons licensed materials are available on the internet. No, you can make use of that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Reinventing the wheel is the most important part. We don't want to do it. But reinventing the wheel is different, is needed sometime when you want to reach some different goal on different space, different area, different spaces. So we promote a continuum of practice, and reuse is just one component of that. So OER actually creates more space for creativity, reflection, and higher order thinking skills for both students and teachers. So we need to look at the use of OER at those level, not just a reuse level.
Okay. Okay, and this is again, I mean, I'm giving you an opportunity to again stress the importance of OER. The question is, why do institutions, teachers, and students need OER?
Okay, the first thing I think we started with was the cost. Okay, one of the biggest challenge in particularly in higher education sector is the the cost of textbooks. Now, cost of textbook is so high that in many places students do not buy textbook, and not having access to a textbooks most of the time affects their learning outcomes. Students know it, but still do not buy textbook for because of lack of funding. I'll give you some statistics. I have collected some statistics from our Indian context. Okay, and this is little outdated data. It's data in I think 2014, but this is authentic data. I think things would have been might have been better or worse. I'm not sure, but I tell you some data that talks about what kind of challenges students face. The annual private cost of a general postgraduate education for an individual in India is about 6% of the national per capita income. If it is a professional education, this cost goes up to 78%. Okay, that means if your child is studying engineering, management, all medical, then you have to sell out 78% of your income for that education. Another interesting fact: learners in general use about 17 to 27% expenses on textbooks. That means, annually, if you have one child, you spend about 25%, let's say, of your income on that child's textbooks and other educational resources. That's the kind of, if you have two children, child, then you have 50% spending kind of things. The data also talks about a very interesting thing. Due to financial constraints or engagement in economic activities, 54.6% of male learners and 64.2% female learners discontinue their studies. The people who are discontinued their studies, this is the bulk of people who are telling that they are not studying because of cost of education. So it becomes our moral duty to adopt OER to reduce cost, and particularly in higher education, technical engineering education, to make textbooks available as OER as an important national priority. We do have most materials nowadays as InfluentNet, but most people do not know those things. No, there is a need for a drive to make it, more people to know it, so that more students and teachers can make use of those materials. So that's one issue of cost. The other thing that what we talk about, for example, educational, and that will save a lot of students money. But the most important part that I talk about for institution is about improving quality. I think most of my examples that I talked about previously is about how OER can make teaching and learning more engaging, and therefore improving the quality of transaction in the schools or in universities and colleges. So we need to look at these two important aspects. And the third important aspect, which universities and colleges and everyone is responsible, is community access. Knowledge is for all, not just for those who are going to colleges and universities. we must create an environment of lifelong learning that even after my graduation, I have access to reputed resources so that I can understand, know things that are going on, and keep building my skills as a lifelong learner. So universities, educational institutions do have a responsibility towards the society to make any information, knowledge resources they are creating to be available through institutional repository to everyone. That's the social mission of these institutions. Most of the time, this is just forgotten. They think that teaching and research. Sometimes not even the discourse is not even learning. Teaching and research are important. Now, extension is also important part of universities and educational institutions, and therefore OER is an extension activity that access will be available to anyone. So what happens these days that you graduate from an educational institution, you don't have access to that institution anymore. But if that institution has an institutional repository, all knowledge resources are there, you can go anytime, learn what is happening, check what is happening, get access to those knowledge, and continue your professional practice. So I think there are three important aspects where educational institutions need to focus so that they are providing good education to everyone, not just to the enrolled student.
Yeah, I have a question. This is from teachers' perspective. Why should teachers invest time and effort in locating, adopting OER in teaching, learning, and assessment when their institutions, they don't recognize their contribution? If they improve quality also, they don't recognize. So don't they deserve at least some non-monetary incentives, teachers?
I think this is a situation. This is a question. We have to ask ourselves. Okay, I have gone through this kind of situation, question myself, but I won't stop if it is not recognized. That's individual choice. Okay, ideally, OER work should be recognized, but it is up to us as teachers. What do you want? What is the locus of control? Do we do things just because somebody will recognize it, or we want to do things for our students? As I said before, if we love our students and we want to give students more information, quality information, opportunity for them to learn from different sources, not me or you as sage on the stage, then you need to do OER work. Now, if you are convinced on that, then you will use OER irrespective of recognition. If recognition comes on the way or incentive comes on the way, that's well and good. That's one aspect. The second aspect of it that if it is not recognized in your institution and you are a champion of OER, then you keep on championing and create a lobby group which will help for more recognition of those works. So not to just think about those stopping, but as I said in the beginning, it's all about individual choices. And OER is also about individual choices. Of course, if we work in an institutional scheme of things, then we need to follow that institutional policy, and we can all make the institutional policy happen. Professor Savitri, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just
Please
want to
add
say
on.
University is an example where just because some of us were very interested in OER, we were able to convince the university that all the educational materials that they put on their site is put there with a CC license. So, I mean, it's not as if, the university was going for copyright, but some of us were able to convince the universities. Of course, then we had to go and teach the teachers what OER is and what it means, and what they should make sure about in the content that they make, so that it can take an open license. Because when you create materials and it has to be put on an open license, you have to be very careful what you put in that also.
Yeah.
So there are several issues. And I remember when the university was first wanting to put OER licenses on the content, we came across a lot of plagiarized material in that content that was created. So, I mean, teachers have to understand openness, freedom, plagiarism, copyright, creative common licenses, and it's not an easy thing to understand. So unless an institution gets committed towards that, or there are some staff members who are committed towards that, it doesn't really happen. And there is a question here that I just saw, that once a teacher, no, who asked that question? I don't know. Once a teacher puts up her content as, yeah, if a teacher creates content with a CC BY license, can the institution where the teacher is working put their own rules of license? I mean, this question obviously comes from an institution where the people, the authorities do not understand these licenses. I mean, like Sanjaya said, these licenses are perpetual. You cannot change them. You cannot, put something that is in the open domain into a closed copyright. So these are issues in institutions, and I think Creative Commons is trying to educate people in education towards these concerns, so that maybe some institutions will, adopt these.
Yeah, I think there are lots of good questions coming up on the chart.
I want to ask a question. It was asked somewhere earlier. We have the National Digital Library of India, and they haven't adopted CC licenses.
I tell you, those are difficult questions. I think everybody need to understand that what is that being converted into digital on that platform. I have not gone into that website for a long time and not looked at the contents of this website. I hope they are all following the copyright rules of converting, and as per the copyright rules and laws, and if it is somebody else's copyright material, they are taking rights to upload there, then they cannot make it OER as such. Okay, because it's somebody else's copyrighted material. So I think it's very important to look at that. They are probably making it a resource available with an ND condition. Let's see that it's an open access material, not an OER material. That's how I make the difference of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a collection of resources from all over the country, and they are making it accessible.
Exactly.
And license on those materials will depend on how it was published initially. So that is what we need to understand, that the National Digital Library is only giving you access to much more material than would have been possible, and at one place. I mean, through one website, you are able to access a lot of material. So that is why and how the National Digital Library is useful. But I mean, one should not even look for pretend there to be OER, because they already are under different licenses.
Exactly.
There is some interesting questions from Eba from which country I forget. Sweden. Yeah, and there's a question gone. And he or she thinks that we have to broaden the perspectives and approaches on OER, not just how it is used in formal education, but also its role for informal learning, micro learning, and most of all for lifelong learning. So your comment on that?
Absolutely right, because that's what I always talk about, and we all talk about in OER field to a large extent. Eva is a very senior member of the OER community, like you, Professor Singh, and OER creates that environment of lifelong learning. The moment a country, an institution commits to OER, you are actually committing to creating an environment of lifelong learning. You create an open educational resource repository which is accessible to anyone. What does that mean? That means you are providing anyone to learn without being an enrolled student in my own institution. Okay, that's the kind of thing. So the whole perspective promoted by all of us when we are talking about OER is, lifelong learning spectrum, the school education, to the cradle to grave kind of situation. But a large now part of formal education happens in the schools and universities, and the biggest concern for all of us today is universal access to secondary education, increased access to higher education, and particularly in Indian context, increasing gross enrollment ratio in higher education. And why that is not happening? Not just for lack of spaces in the institutions, but lack of affordability for many of our people. And affordability is an issue which can be mitigated to some extent by using open educational resources and creating a more open and flexible learning environment by which people can come back, can learn on their own and come back and give the test and get their certification. So that's the higher open education that we talked about today. So it's all about that environment that we are all talking about, and we have certain situation in different countries, but there is a long way to go to make it more flexible, more lifelong learning framework adopted.
Maybe I can mention the OER-U here, OER University, where courses are free and you can pick up any course and study it. And only if you want a certification, you have to pay some fees and get the certification. So for studying, there's a lot of content free available on the OER-U. So that is one platform you could search and learn, and maybe even contribute content towards that platform. I mean, so through this these webinars, we also invite you to create open education resources and license your own content as an open education resource.
So I have two questions from YouTube. One is Professor Chandrasekhar Rao, how to segregate OER for different categories of users for quick access. Are there any such initiatives? This is Chandrasekhar sir from Rao.
Now, I'm not sure about categorizing users, but if we look at one of the things that we suggest when you are creating an open educational resource repository, then you put the one of the aspect of metadata is the levels. Is that if it is for indicate the level of that suitability of that OER, if it is meant for primary school, secondary school, or college or university level, or what those things, so that the user knows at in the beginning that this is meant for XYZ, and that saves a lot of time. This is one of aspect of ensuring OER quality. If a OER is not available with those metadata information about for whom it is meant for, then it is of it may be the very good thing, but its usability gets compromised. So I think that's one of the things that we talked about, and Professor Chandrasekhar Rao sir knows more about these things than any one of us else, because he is the expert on that field.
And another question on quality of OER from YouTube, Mahua Rai. Is there any certification developed to ensure quality of OER?
This is a very interesting question. Again, I tell you, and I get it all the time. And OER is a public product. We would not like an agency or someone to come and certify OER. That's the kind of stuff. There are initiatives, people have started doing things, and I would not be surprised that a day will come, there will be an agency who will be certifying OER and taking money from you. But that's not something that we want it to be, because OER is a community driven approach. You create materials of quality yourself, release it to the OER, to the community, and if somebody is not happy, then that's up to that person to revise and improve the material. That's what I take it as a quality concept. Okay, I have developed developed a material.
Sanjay,
Yeah,
here
go
I'd
ahead.
like to say something not as a Creative Commons head, but as Savitri. Whether you think it's possible like that when you go and buy something on Amazon or Flipkart or something, you get public reviews on the material, on the object, and these reviews sometimes help you decide which ones you want to use or buy. So whether we can have these kind of public reviews on content which people can use as they like, because in the long run these Amazon reviews, they are quite useful to help you decide what to buy and what not to buy.
No, that's what is a very important point. And in fact, I have written articles on ensuring quality of OER, and one of the recommendation we have given is the use of user ratings. In fact, I developed a software on user ratings on
I remember that.
wiki based approach to that. But important point is that user is the key thing. So if I develop a course and you are not happy about this quality of the course, then you are free, because my material is OER, you are free to improve the quality of the material. So that's the challenge. People they look at the biggest challenge with OER field is that we need to change the mindset that material that I create is of good quality and somebody else created is of poor quality. Now, then my submission to everyone is looks like this: that look, if you feel something is not of good quality, work on that, improve the quality and release it so that somebody else will get benefit out of your expertise. So what we are doing here in the field of OER is we are trying to share expertise. So quality comes from the community. So if something is there and we believe it is not of good quality, it is us who is responsible to improve the quality of that product. That's the approach is taken. The other thing that we have done is, we have created a set of quality criteria and made it known, and we want it to be known to everyone. Okay, everyone who is creating OER. So you as the creator is aware of those quality characteristics and you inculcate those things in your materials. That's another. At institutions, we say we have given you a list of 34 criteria, a big list of criteria. You choose which are the things which are important to your institution and your learners, and create your own quality benchmarks in your institution. So we believe in giving the rights of quality assurance to the user. So everybody is here as a quality assurance person. My submission would be to colleagues not to look for an agency for quality assurance. The moment you look for agency for quality assurance, you are giving the upper hand to somebody else to sit and pass judgment on your work. Your work is important to you and your student.
Hemant, you wanted to ask a question. Do you want
You are now unmuted.
switch on your mic and ask a question? Yes.
You still need OER probably, because you will have if there is good OER quality, you will need it. Okay, but OER is all about choices. The flexibility, the freedom here is an issue, is a key important thing. So you as a rich parent, you decide what you want to do it. You want to buy a proprietary product, or you want to go for a free product which is available with the same or maybe better quality product. Now you want to judge a product by its price as free or as content as quality. So it's that freedom. I will say again, I think we are talking two things, and those are both are important. It's freedom of use, reuse, revise, all those things are important. Okay, and that, as freedom. And free is also important, because that's where you reduce the cost. And I'm using free and freedom both because of two things. Because CC licenses because if it is CC BY license, a material is available in CC BY license, I can take that material and create an educational app out of that material, and I can charge some fees for that material, even though I am giving the original credit to Dr. Indira for creating that product. But I have built on that, and I have created an educational app, and I'm selling that educational app for $5. Okay, that's I'm making money. So there will be something. So people will say that's freedom of things that gives, and there is money transaction. But for me, that the original material is still available free, and therefore anyone can use of, and don't spend that $5 by using that educational app. So free is very important here to make it available.
You are now muted.
So there is a question.
One question from YouTube from Abra Mukhopadhyaya. To start with OER, what will be the first step?
Excellent. The first step is that you have a need. Okay, you have a need, and that need is your student. Okay, your student. As teachers, we teach something. And the first thing I say is that, okay, what do you do to teach something? You know the subject, you are an expert, but you don't want to teach what you know only. You want to add on to your knowledge, you want to refresh your knowledge, you want to add to your knowledge, and therefore you go to a library, you go to a search engine, you search things, and you find proprietary materials, you reuse those materials in your class and teach. Instead of that, you look for OER first, and you build on the OER, so you become more creative and teach in your class, share in your class, make those resources available to your class before you go to the class. So you can do lots of things, and I think I would look prescriptive if I talk more about this to a group of people who would be, many of you would be teachers. But I think finding is the key here. If you have a need, you search for OER, you find the OER. If you don't find the OER, create it. If you find the OER, contextualize it. Make it use for your own situation. That is the basic step. Yes.
If there are any final questions, Indira, I think
one question is promoting open educational practices. How open educational practices enable teachers to reap the benefits of digital technologies, either in redesigning teaching, learning, assessment, or especially for providing learner support beyond either online class or offline class?
Now, I think OEP has emerged as a new child in the discourse of education. Whatever OEP was that we were all doing in OER, we were not focusing on, before this term OEP started, we were not focusing on content creation alone. No, we are not focusing on textbook production. There are certain group of people who are focused on textbook production, and they thought that, okay, no, textbook production alone is not sufficient. And therefore, we need to create another terminology called open educational practices. That's the implementation of OER. Okay. Whereas we in India, at least, since I started in 2006 on this field, I have been doing OER as practice. That means you create OER in context, distribute OER to your students, and improve the quality of teaching and learning. So we were doing that thing. OEP talks about the same thing. What it talks about OEP is in a more institutionalized context. And we would talk about how a range of things that institution is trying to do. Does the institution has a policy or not? How OER is integrated in teaching and learning? How research on OER is promoted, and so on and so forth. How student is engaged as co-creator of knowledge resources. All those dimensions are included in the OEP, and those are important practice things to promote OER. So nowadays, my approach is that if you do OEP, you are promoting OER. If you are not doing OEP, then you are not promoting OER as such, because production is not sufficient. No, if you create resources and they are not used, what's the point? We just released a book on which Dr. Indira, you have also contributed a chapter, and within 1 week there are at least 1,000 people who have downloaded from our repository, at least 2,000 people who have downloaded from my LinkedIn. So the point is, of course, some people will download, but download is happening. People will read and use of that thing. Those are OER. We don't know what they will do with those materials. Okay, but I hope those will be very useful in educational context, in education departments, and contextualizing technology-enabled learning. So when you are doing OER, releasing OER, you are releasing OER for OER practice, and OER practice is most important. If you are not doing that, you are not promoting OER, or you are not doing OER. OER is inbuilt in OEP.
Yeah, one last question from my end. Policy first or capacity building first?
I will give you a funny answer. It's chicken and egg, okay, issue. No, and I always tell that there is no first thing in the world. This first or that first is not a good decision making situation. There is nothing first. Both has to go simultaneously, side by side. There is nothing that happens one after the other. Both has to be simultaneously available. And Dr. Indira, I talk about three things:
Yes.
Policy, capacity, and technology. If these three things are not there, particularly in institutional context, things doesn't work. One of these fall, the system falls. If you don't have capacity, well-trained teachers, if you don't have a policy, or if you don't have appropriate technology to do the OER things will not work. If three things are there, things will work very well. But an ideal condition to have all the three things is always ideal condition. It won't be able to be there. So we live with those complexities all the time. We strive to make all the three things available. Try to make all the three things.
Thank you.
Sanjay, some participants want the link for the books that you have mentioned on and off, 2 or 3. So maybe you can send it to me, and then I'll send it on to the whole group.
Yeah, Dr. Indira also knows about that.
Yeah. I shared Oasis. Yeah, I'll share that.
Yeah, I think I'm also having a copy. But anyway,
yeah,
I'm just letting you know that people want that link.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Indira, I would suggest you also share the Learn OER link, learnoer.col.org, because people might like to do that short course on OER.
Yeah. And so I think we've had a very fruitful 1.5 hours, Sanjay and all participants. And I would like to Thanks, Sanjay, especially because he had to get up early in the morning to
Yes.
be with us. And Michelle and Hemant for all the logistics and the help. I mean, all through. Michelle did a lot of work. Hemant, this last step. And Indira, we couldn't have done without you. I mean, we are doing this together. Three of us are actually taking this forward. And we would like to announce the next session on September 12th on finding OER and building Creative Commons attribution. So mails will go out, and again, we'll be working using this platform as well as the YouTube. And those of you who want to register, please do it in time, because I think there we will have a number restriction.
Yes.
Because we cannot take in so many people, because that will be more in a workshop mode.
Hands-on.
And I promise that in case there are a lot of registrations, we will do it in multiple rounds. Maybe one round of 30 or 40 people. And in case there are more registrants, we will go in for second round also. The other thing is, all of you, please try and understand the Creative Commons licenses and the use of OER, such that you can think of joining Creative Commons Global Network. Because in India, 37 is a very small number. I mean, we should be in a few hundreds if we are to make any effect on the community. And if you are to influence anybody, we have to be in larger numbers so that who are committed to the cause. So please ask your questions. You can send in an email. Michelle, can you share the email that they can write to? Creative Commons, what is it? CC India. CC India.email@gmail.com. Is it right? Yeah, that's it. So this, you can write into this email ID for any information. And I think that's all. I would, again, thanks, Sanjay. Nice to meet you. I mean, we haven't met for a few years. In the last 2 years.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Sanjay Mishra.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, thank you.
And
Yeah.
join us again in our next round.
Thank you. Sure, my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.